Well, it was a very interesting time to be president because there were some massive things happening for the society around that time. And probably the thing that made the most immediate difference was we had a brand new executive officer, William Whitaker, who I really liked because he was a geographer by trade and I'd done a degree in geography as well. So I sort of felt an affinity for William. But with the appointment of an executive officer, what happened was we got rid of the apple boxes. It took a long time for people to sort through them, but the apple boxes disappeared during that time. What it also meant was that we could do things, and first of all the council had to learn about governance, and they had to learn to govern rather than to operate the society, and that took a little bit of doing at times. But once everybody learned that all you really had to do was say it would be nice to do something, then we had the mechanism for doing those things, and we weren't constantly waiting on people who were too busy. Around about the same time, the society had a real crisis in its membership. And I don't know the exact figure, but something like 200 or 300 or even less than that. And so we were navel gazing and wondering, were we going down the tubes or what is going to happen? And at that time, and in response to that crisis, a group of clinicians formed the College of Clinical Psychologists, and we thought that that would be the death knell. However, we asked around and asked of our membership, what is it that they really wanted? And at that time, there were two things that were really sexy, if you like, and one was supervision, and the other one was issues of sexual abuse. And so we set about running workshops up and down the country. We imported people like Daphne Hewson from Australia several times, and with the as we started to deliver things to the membership increased, and I was delighted to learn recently that the membership of the society is now in excess of 1,200 with 600 students. And it had been especially difficult to get student memberships when I was president. So there's obviously been a huge turnaround that has continued. Another area that was important during my time was the emergence of biculturalism. The 90s was a time when all sorts of things, good and bad, were happening in pursuit of biculturalism. Lots of people were attending Waitangi workshops. Lots of people had no idea really what it was all about. We talked about finding Maori partners. We didn't really know what that meant. And I remember saying to one psychologist at Waikato, we really need to do this properly and carefully, and without causing waves of, I guess, what now we would call radicalization of sections of the psychology community. And I made this comment to somebody, and she said back to me, you realise that if you say kia ora in some places, that you're being radical. And I think that, there is always further to go, but I think that we managed the people like Linda Nakora, Ray Nen, Avril Herbert really led the way for the evolution and the partnership with Maori and with Maori psychology. Jim and Jane Ritchie, of course, were at Waikato, and I think that we now understand that the cultural context of what we do is a critical predictor of the outcomes of what we do. The other thing that was probably has been the most far-reaching in an ongoing sort of way has been the development of the code of ethics. Psychologists had a code of conduct, which was a you will do this and you will do that. And I remember when I was Vice President and President-elect, attending a disciplinary hearing, and I forget who the person was and what the issue was, but I just was terribly aware that our testing of this guy's performance was felt to me like a real kangaroo court. And so the development of the code of ethics, which really has given a framework by which psychologists should be thinking and making decisions, I think has been a huge achievement for the profession. We borrowed or really uplifted the Canadian Code of Ethics and adapted it to our purposes, and I think it continues to serve us well. For the future, I worry about the profession of psychology, and because we have done so much, we have legitimised and created an expectation for evidence-based practice, evidence-based interventions, monitoring of our own practice. But there are still some areas that seem to defy us. Youth suicide continues unabated. Child abuse, we still kill a baby every 6 to 7 weeks in this country. Our support of out-of-home support of children, I think is inadequate and bordering on cruel at times. And as a profession, I think there are places here where we should be more involved. We know a lot about all of these things, but we're not bridging that gap to where it can actually make a difference.